Day 3 of 30 Days Reading Challenge, Chapter 7, Part 3. For everything there is a season. If the adversity hypothesis is true, and if the mechanism of benefit has to do with sense making and getting those three levels of personality to cohere, then there should be times in life when adversity will be more or less beneficial. Perhaps the stronger, uh, perhaps the strong version of hypothesis is true during only the part of the life courses. There are many reasons for thinking that children are particularly vulnerable to adversity. Genes guide brain development throughout childhood, but the development is also affected by environmental context, and one of the most important contextual factors is the overall level of safety versus threat. Good parenting can help tune up the attachment system to make a kid more adventurous, yet even beyond such effects. If a child environments feel safe and comfortable, the child will, on average, develop a more positive affective style and will be less anxious as an adult. But if the environment offers daily, uncontrollable threats from predators, bullies, or random violence, the child's brain will be altered, set to be less trusting and more vigilant. Given that most people in modern Western, given that the most people in modern Western nations live in safe worlds where optimism and approach cameras on fast है आज नहाने के बाद ही फिर Given that most people in modern Western nations live in safe worlds, such as optimism and approach motivations generally pay off, and given that most people in psychotherapy need loosening up, not tightening up, it is probably best for children to develop the most positive effective style or the highest set range S from chapter 5 that their genes will allow. Major adversity is unlikely to have many or perhaps any beneficial effects for children. On the other hand, children are amazingly resilient and are not as easily damaged by any time event, by a one-time event, even by sexual abuse as most people think. Chronic conditions are much more important. Of course, children need limits to learn self-control, and they need plenty of failure to learn that success takes hard work and persistence. Children should be protected but not spoiled. Things might be different for teenagers. Younger children know some stories about themselves, but the active and chronic striving to integrate one's past, present, and future into a coherent narrative begins only in the mid to late teens. This claim is supported by a curious fact about autobiographical memory called the memory worm. When people older than 30 are asked to remember the most important or vivid events of their lives, they are disproportionately likely to recall events that occurred between the ages of 15 and 25. This is the age when a person's life blooms: first love, college, and intellectual growth, living and perhaps traveling independently. And it is the time when young people, at least in Western countries, make many of the choices that will define their lives. If there is a special period for identity information, a time when Life events are going to have the biggest influence on the rest of the life story. This is it. So adversity, especially if overcome fully, is probably most beneficial in the late teens and early 20s. We can't we can't ethically conduct experiments. We can't ethically conduct experiments that induce trauma at different ages. But in a way, life has performed these experiments for us. The major event of the 20th century, the Great Depression, World War II, hit people at different ages. And the sociologist Jan Elder had produced elegant analysis of longitudinal data collected from the same people over many days to find out why some thrived and some other crumbled after these adversities hit. Elder once summarized his finding in this way: there is a storyline across all the work I have done. Events do not have meaning in themselves. Those meanings are derived from the interaction between people, group, and the experience itself. Kids who went through their difficult circumstances usually came out rather well. Elder found that a lot hinge on the family and the person's degree of social integration. Children as well as adults who weathered crisis while embedded within strong social groups and networks fared much better. They were more likely to come out stronger and mentally healthier than were those who faced adversities without such social support. Social networks did not just reduce suffering, they offered avenues for finding meaning and purpose. As Durkheim concluded from his studies of society. For example, the widely shared adversities of the Great Depression offered many people offered many young people the chance to make a real contribution of their families by finding a job that brought in a few dollars each. The need for people to pull together within their nations to fight World War II appear to have made those who lived through it more responsible and civic-minded, at least in the United States, even if they played no direct role in the war effort. There is, there is, however, a time limit on the adversity. Elder says that start to crystallize by the late 20s. Even हाँ आवाज लगा रही हूँ. There is, however, a time limit on first adversity. Elder says that life starts to crystallize by the late 20s. Even young men who had not been doing well before serving in World War II often turned their lives around afterwards. But people who faced their first real life test after the age of 30. For example, combat in that war, financial ruin in the Great Depression, were less resilient and less likely to grow from their experience. So adversity may be most beneficial for people in the late teens and into their 20s. Elder work Elder's work is full of reminders that the action is in the interaction that is, the ways that one's unique personality interact with detail about an event and its social context to produce a particular and often unpredictable outcome. In the area of research known as lifespan development, there are few simple rules in the form of X causes Y. Nobody, therefore, can propose an course, ideal life courses with careful scheduled adversities that would be beneficial for everyone. We can, however, that for many people, particularly those who overcome adversities in their twenties, adversities made them stronger, better, and even happier than they would have been without it. Error and wisdom. I expect that when I have children, I will be I will be no different from other parents in wanting to edit their forehead pattern and remove all adversities. Even if I could be convinced that the trauma experienced at the age of 24 was going to teach my daughter important lessons and make her a better person, I would think, well, why can't I just teach her those lessons directly? Isn't there some way she can reap the benefits without the cost? But a common piece of worldly wisdom is that life's most important lessons cannot be taught directly. Marcel Proust said, "We do not receive wisdom, we must discover it for ourselves." After a journey through the wilderness which no one else can make for us, which no one can spare us, our wisdom is the point of view from which we come to last come at last to regard the world. Recent research on wisdom proves Foucault's correct. Knowledge comes in two major forms: explicit and tacit. Explicit knowledge is all that facts you know and can consciously report, independent of context. Wherever I am, I know that the capital of Bulgaria is Sofia. Explicit knowledge is taught directly in school. The rider gathers it up and files it away, ready for use in later reasoning. But wisdom is based, according to Robert Sternberg, a leading wisdom researcher, on tacit knowledge. Tacit knowledge is procedure, it's knowing how rather than knowing that. It is acquired without direct help from others, and it is related to goals that a person values. Tacit knowledge resides in an elephant. It is a skill that elephant acquires gradually from life experience. It depends on context. There is no universal set of best practice for ending a romantic relationship, consoling a friend, or resolving a moral disagreement. Wisdom, says Sternberg, is a tacit knowledge that lets a person balance two sets of things. First, wise people are able to balance their own needs, the needs of others, and the needs of people or things beyond the immediate interaction. Example, institution, the environment, or people who may be adversely affected later on. Ignorant people see everything in black and white. They rely heavily on the myth of pure evil, and they are strongly influenced by their own self-interest. The wise are able to see things from other points of view, appreciate shades of grey, and then choose or advise a course of action that works out best for everyone in the long run. Second, wise people are able to balance three responses to situations: adaptation, changing the self to fit the environment; shaping, changing the environment; and selection, choosing to move to a new environment. This second balance corresponds roughly to the famous serenity prayer: God, grant me, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. God, grant me serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. If you already know this prayer, your riders knows it. If you live this prayer, your elephant knows it too, tactically. And you are wise. Steinberg's idea shows why parents can't teach their children wisdom directly. The best they can do is provide a range of life experiences that will help their children acquire tacit knowledge in a variety of life domains. Parents can also model wisdom in their own lives and gently encourage children to think about situations, look at other viewpoints, and achieve balance in challenging times. Shelter your children when young, but if the sheltering goes on through the child's teen and twenties, it may keep out wisdom and growth as well as pain. Suffering often makes people more compassionate, helping them find balance between self and others. Suffering often leads to active coping, stands for shaping, appraisal coping, stands for adaptations, and change in plans and direction, stands for selections. Post Post-traumatic growth usually involves, therefore, the growth of wisdom. The strong version of the adversity hypothesis may be true, but only if we add caveats. For adversity to be maximally beneficial, it should happen at the right time, young childhood, to the right people, those with the social and psychological resource to rise to challenge and find benefits, and to the right degree, not too severe as to cause PTSD. Each life course is so unpredictable, yet we can never know whether a particular setback will be beneficial to a particular person in the long run. But perhaps we do know enough to allow some editing of a child's forehead writing. Go ahead and erase some of those early traumas, but think twice or await future research before erasing the rest.